I believe Cargill right now has multiple plants, like they were saying, that has a thin client application on a tablet, all right? And that today does not work on private 5G. So to do that, what does it take? As we have painfully realized in the last few months, and for those of you who are here, you should talk to a gentleman named Steve Toteda from Celona's team who's looking at this world, and he will give you the deep and dirty about what an OT ecosystem looks like. But this example is a great illustration. To do that, you would essentially need, first and foremost, that hardware tablet that's going to be made by a certain manufacturer. They actually happen to be here now, so if you want to give them grief on that, you can. But they need to have hardware support, usually as a module from someone like Telit. Once they have that, they need to actually, in software, enable all the capabilities for private networks, which, as we know, is not obviously documented anywhere. You then need to support eSIM the right way, in a way that actually an enterprise can use and not just be used in public networks and operators. And after all of that is done, you now take that device and it needs to be certified for interoperability against every network that exists that their customer might use. And at that point, your infrastructure is ready. You haven't even yet talked about the application layer. And now we talk about that thin client, which usually comes from one of the most reputed, very large industrial companies, needs to actually validate that their application, which is typically, as I said, it was a thin client, so it's extremely jitter sensitive, then works as well as it worked over a wired network, now works over this private 5G network. That is the journey for today an end customer who's already likes private 5G, is already deploying private 5G to now get value out of this. That is a complicated ecosystem, and that's the framing I wanted to give you all, as I'm going to now open that aperture, and I'm going to really talk about how do we look at that from different perspectives, okay? And if you're noticing one theme here, our attempt today, again, as I said, is let's open the aperture. Let's stop looking at it as what is the network infrastructure? How do I do private 5G? That is an important point, but the point is bigger here. So for that, we're going to have a second panel today that's going to look at this from different perspectives. And I would like to start by inviting Parm Sandhu, who is the VP of Enterprise 5G Products and Services at NTT Data, that you've already been introduced to the organization, has a large view on the business transformation of all of these companies. Second, I would like to introduce Amir Bushehri, who's the Director of Strategic Alliances, to look at it from that device perspective. I cannot tell you how bullish we are on our partnership with Digi. They are the most forward-leaning company into looking at this from a device perspective. So thank you so much, Amir, for coming. Third, I would like to invite Christina Mendelsberg from Palo Alto Networks, who is a Senior Business Development Manager for Enterprise 5G Security. And I'll give such a huge shout out to Palo Alto Networks for looking at private 5G security when it was not yet a thing. When private 5G was not yet a big enough thing, Palo Alto Networks realized that this was something they had to look at from a security perspective. And last but certainly not the least, I would like to invite Matt Hoover from Rockwell Automation, a product manager there. I mean, this is one of those names, Rockwell Automation, that probably pops up in more conversations, and I never know what to do with it. And so I'm really excited and very grateful that Matt has decided to join us here. And when I was thinking about this, and I was like, okay, how do we do this panel? Candidly, we realized nobody at Celona actually knows enough about any of these things to talk to them about it. And so we had to actually request a person that I think is the most passionate about developing these ecosystems around this world. I would like to invite Norman Fekrat, who is #1 founder and managing director of Imagine Wireless, but somewhat more importantly for this group, he's also the chair of the board of the OnGo Alliance. And if I may do say so before I hand it over, we've been thinking about, okay, device interoperability, how do we do this? I am a big proponent that we need to get behind the OnGo Alliance. So that would be one thing. Thank you so much, Norm, for taking on that additional role, and I'm looking forward to this discussion.
Thanks, Rajeev. Appreciate it. Thank you, Mehmet, for putting this together. I think it's a great conference, so good to see you guys again. I have two roles, as Rajeev said. One is, you guys are all familiar with the OnGo Alliance, right? The CBRS Alliance. If you're not members, then I'll be contacting you soon. But more seriously, we have a new mission, and the mission's a little different from the past. We're going to be the Global Industry Spectrum Association that drives advocacy on behalf of industry globally, not just in the US, about shared spectrum. So that's a big change. But no one's doing it, and it's sorely needed. And it should have been the mission from the beginning. The second thing we're really going to change is device certification. There's no single device certification. It's a huge problem. We're talking about a lot today, and we will on this panel. But that's the second thing we're going to change. So if you guys are all believers in that, we are going to put a lot of energy and focus, and I hope the whole industry benefits on that behalf. So looking back at my tenure at the OnGo Alliance, I hope that's what it'll look like when I'm done with that role. So with that, we have a great panel. I think the previous panel did a great job at talking about all the different connectivity methods, more of a horizontal approach. You know, you have the private 5G, you have the public cellular, Wi-Fi. That's great and all, but nobody cares about the network, really. It just wants to be connected and get value out of it. This panel is a little different, so we're going to have a totally different conversation. We're going to go up the stack and down the stack, right? And that's what really matters, because if you're not getting value out of this investment, you know, who cares, right? And when you spend enough time with the head of OTs or enterprises, you know, a private 5G network it's a LAN, right? And I think it's kind of been hinted around before, but if you view it as, does anyone question whether they need a wired LAN anymore? Does anybody do a business case to, should I do an Ethernet LAN or not? I mean, we're almost there, but it's strategic IT infrastructure, and some of the buyers out there get it. Some don't. Some will go try to solve one problem at a time. So I just wanted to change that perspective a little bit. It is an enterprise LAN, and it should really be viewed as an extension of that wireless LAN, and that's where all the value really is. So with that, you know, going up and down the stack here, right? So we have a great panel. We've got automation, we've got security, we have devices, and the network side of this. So I'm going to just start and maybe do a quick introduction from everyone on the panel, and I want you to say what you're going to say. What are you going to say new to the audience? That's what and I didn't ask you guys this before, and that's good because we didn't really do that. So think about that. But Matt, Rockwell, introduce yourself, and then what's new that you're going to say today that no one's ever heard before?
What's new? So Matt Hoover, I'm a firmware engineer from 1,000 years ago in marketing, sales, wireless, a whole bunch of different applications. Working on strategy at Rockwell for how to do wireless. So what's new? I'm going to fail miserably on that one. I think the real key we're focusing on, that I'm focusing on, is how to make the wireless piece a tool in the toolbox for automation folks that they can use just like wired. So it's not this complex unknown thing that you can show the products that you want to run wirelessly, do what you want them to do. And we have some demos over in the hall for that, so I don't know if that's new, but probably desired.
Sorry, we'll come back to it later, too, but you can have some time to think about it now. Christine?
Yes, so Christina, Mendelsberg, Palo Alto Networks. I work under the go-to-market team within Palo, focused solely on enterprise 5G security, but really when we say that, anything mobile security, 4G, 3G, LTE, whatever mobile connection you guys have. And really, my role is to help educate customers and companies to really adopt and not have security be an afterthought. And you know, when you're trying to deploy these massive private networks, oftentimes we're finding out in the field that it's something that they're thinking about after that they've already done the all of the things that are needed in order to get that out there. And so I want to help bring awareness. And then we are also coming out with some newer devices here in the near future that will definitely apply to more use cases. So.
Absolutely. Amir Bushehri, I help run the Alliance group over at Digi International. We are actually celebrating our 40th year. There's not a lot of folks in the industrial IoT space that can say that, but we're proud to be a leader in that space. We are based in Minnesota. We use Western modules. So things like BABA, Build America, Buy America, those are becoming more and more important, and we're strategically placed to help customers with those things. Oh, sorry. Norman, by the way, he really likes to keep us on our feet. And so...
Got to keep it interesting.
Honestly, yeah, the one new thing I think we'll be able to cover today is a very pointed effort called Robot Connectivity as a Service. And a lot of what Rajeev mentioned earlier with kind of a turnkey solution for the OEMs to help the customers like Cargill and others.
Parm?
Yeah, hi. Parm Sandhu. I lead the 5G Edge AI business globally for NTT Data. I think everybody knows NTT. Maybe a little to share about myself. I come from about over 30 years of telecom expertise selling telecom solutions for enterprises. So really thank you for having NTT and myself on the panel. So I'm going to maybe touch on two things. One, a new term, which I think it's not my term, but I think it's coined by Paul on my team. It's called sensor fusion. So a little bit touching on what is sensor fusion and why. I think the second, I want to talk one term, is voice. So those are the two things. So
Voice
maybe,
is not new, Parm.
Exactly, but it's new here because no one said it once. So I'll just say it's new here.
Good, you got the checklist for Rajeev later. So if you think about it, we've got the whole stack here, right? We've got automation, we've got security, we've got the devices, and we've got the network. They all need to get along better, right, at the end of the day. And if you want this whole integrated stack, because the customer just wants to solve a problem, right? They want a business outcome, and they want value. So Matt, I'm going to start with you on the automation side. You know, what do you need from this group? Like, your customer is demanding you guys to automate a process, to do end-to-end workflow, to get a result, right? What is missing? What are the gaps? What do you need to get this whole alignment going?
Yeah, no, I mean, that's a great question. The one picture of the guy staring at the AMR of like, you know, what do I do? I was talking about this earlier with someone of, you know, most of our products are Ethernet based. So on the engineering side, it's a PHY, it's an RJ45 connector, and, you know, the interface has been known for how many ever decades. You know, I forget who mentioned it, the certification and the antennas and all power, all that kind of stuff now comes into play. So it's a big step to make that jump, and that's some of the things that talked about here are desperately needed to try to make that process a little easier. So, and that's one of the challenges, you know, the other side of the process, or other side of the thing was the engineer checking the valve or whatever he was checking. I don't know if you noticed he had a device on his vest. So that device is typically for gas. You know, its location, it has a bunch of other functions typically, but one of the big things is gas in the area that they're in. You know, those devices now typically run all custom wireless. You know, so if there's a way to get those onto a common network, there's opportunity at both sides. You know, how do you make that device easier to develop and get into the product and get out to customers, and then how does the customer get new functions, new services? For us, the machine has been typically bolted down, never moves. You know, and customers are really tired of being restricted that way. They want to be able to, no, I want that machine, I want to move it 6 times a year, once a week. It's not an AMR, but I want to move the machine. So those are the kind of things that we really are trying to focus to address.
So just getting the native connectivity in those types of devices?
Yep. And like I said earlier, you know, I want a wireless network to, you know, I don't want to have to worry about it. I want to just add it into how I'm building my, whatever the engine blocks, Clorox, OJ, whatever the customer does. Sorry. I just want to use it. So that's what we're trying to get to.
Yeah, so connectivity being like a utility model.
Yep.
It's just there,
Yep.
right? So on the device side, like these AGVs, AMRs, how does that conversation go?
Yeah, so we have Rockwell has an AMR vendor, Auto. So a lot of the discussion is, Wi-Fi works. And a lot of Mir, Auto, all the guys typically design their AMRs to work in a Wi-Fi environment that's poor. They're assuming it's bad, so I'm going to design it appropriately. There's a lot of opportunity for once it gets to a cellular network, what kind of extra things can I do? So I'm like Robert talked about going to Future Tech and seeing the Mir down there running around. I have an Auto with a 5G interface on it that's running in our lab.
And how have those conversations gone with those vendors and OEMs? Are they putting the chipset in? Are they ahead of the curve or behind the curve? I mean, are they natively cellular enabled?
Yeah, no, it's you guys know this. The automation space is pretty far behind.
Why?
I think we've been able to focus on, our products run. There's an RPI. It's a requested packet interval. So typically, the default's 20 milliseconds, and it needs the lady from T-Mobile talked about it really well. It has to be 20 milliseconds all the time, not just like some of the time, or bad things happen typically. So our answer is wire it, and we've been able to do that, and I think now with, this is what I'm testing specifically is, can you run that 5G network at 20 milliseconds all the time, or less? So that's, I think
And can they?
Yes, yeah, it works. So the trick now is I forget the other discussion of how do you integrate all the pieces to actually deliver that, and that's where we're going to be at for the next couple of years. So these kind of things that are being talked about here will be key.
Yeah, and on the industrial side and physical AI, it's been a laggard, right? Just in the non-carpeted areas, there's all the OEM device manufacturers. I mean, we have Access in the room here with Anthony. They were early adopter. They have native embedded chipsets for connectivity to any cellular platform, but it's been a big problem and challenge, right? Yep. So Amir, going to you next. You knew it was coming, so we gave you a little time.
Don't know the question, but no.
I think you probably do. But how, from your perspective, how can we? The only way I know how to do this is to get OEMs to embed wireless connectivity natively in their technology is to give them a huge forecast, right? A device forecast. And that's what the telecom operators do to get all these other devices in there. But why industry is just not organized? Like, why can't industry get together and say, I need 500,000 AGVs and 800,000 AMRs, go make it and we'll buy them? It's not, why? Why is that not being done? Yeah. Is it just lack of organization or just communication or
I think he mentioned they're a little bit a laggard in that, but there's no reason we can't do retrofits in the meantime, and that's where we're positioning. Digi has an OEM business. We do integrations as well, and we see those designs take 12, 18 months just to kind of get approved and then implemented and then managed and deployed. And hopefully by then, 5G is not over with, right?
6G.
Right, so
ready.
So what we've done is say, look, we get the lay of the land, we get the laggard mentality. Wi-Fi works on 1 or 2 robots, but when you scale, it doesn't. And so what we're doing is we're going to take a concerted effort with Celona, and we're going to target these OEMs. And this is where we need your help. Chick-fil-A yesterday gave us some of the robots they use, and Cargill helped us with some of those that they use. But we need to be able to do those outreaches for you on your behalf and put in front of them a turnkey solution, because that's what they're afraid of, is they don't have that expertise. They're working on the head. They're working on the arm, right? They're working on the next thing for them. And they don't have time to be experts in cellular. We do. We're professionals. We can do it. We just need to show them that this is a immediate improvement for their customers. And really, that's what robots were made for, or that's what private 5G, vice versa, that relationship is made for. So what you'll see is, at the end of this month, we're going to do a webinar. We're really going to, that's our first pass at seeing who's interested in joining this ecosystem. But what we've also seen is it takes the voice of the customer to drive that change. And so we may lean on you guys and say, could you join us in this effort with Mir or any of those? By the way, I like Mir. Kind of sounds like Amir, but yeah, we're gonna ask for your help if what we've seen continues, which is not interested, right? These robotic OEMs are not interested. So yeah.
So what are the options? I mean, I think it may be helpful for the audience. You guys tell me if you know it already, but how do you connect those devices? Like, what are the ways you do it?
So right now it's aftermarket, and so fortunately 5G RedCap is prevalent and available. We just launched our first 5G RedCap product. What you're going to see is a decrease in the amount of power it needs, the decrease in the amount of size it needs, but most importantly, cost, right? So right now, it's about half the cost of full-blown what's called eMBB 5G. What we're hearing is over the next year or two, it's going to go down another 30–40% in price. So that helps us scale. The power side of it, these AMRs, they have their own battery, right? And so it needs to be very power efficient. Sometimes full-blown 5G is a little bit of a power hog. So RedCap helps that efficiency level. So really, it's that retrofitting, but offering a config, kind of almost like a white paper on here is exactly how it works, and we're going to hold your hand the whole way through it.
Yeah, I think that's going to be very important. And this is the area of opportunity and focus, right? So yep. We all need to be aligned on that. Christine, I'm going to go to you next and Parm after that. But, okay, so you've got the automation modules, you've got the devices connected. Someone's going to ask the question. There's always that guy in the back of the room. How's this thing being secured? OT, IT, why don't you give us your perspective on, are they secure? What do you need to do to make them secure?
Well, innately, they're not secure, so that's the first thing. That's the first flaw that you have to realize in the real world situation. And so what we can help do is what we call securing from the edge to the core when it comes to the private 5G networks. And it's important to obviously protect the core, but so over 70% of breaches actually come from the IT environment and flow into the OT environment, surprisingly, but it also goes the other way. And so if you have balance on both sides from a security stack perspective, the more secure inherently you will be. And there's never a silver bullet that's going to mitigate all the risk. Unfortunately, those bad actors find ways to get in. They're getting more sophisticated, more agile, quicker, right? Zero-day attacks are literally less than a day, and there's over 19 million of them are happening every day. So you want to protect those OT assets for sure. And so the closer we get to the edge with our next generation firewalls, we're able to help bring that zero trust principle from the core to the edge. And what that really entails is app ID. We use an app ID, we use user ID and content ID. So user ID, think of, should this person be accessing whatever they're trying to access, right? Content ID, should they be getting this content? And then app ID is, okay, are they able to even access this app? So those principles will help your security stack and help protect those assets, and then also from mixed pollination between the IT and the OT environments. It's very important to keep them segmented.
And what about on the device side? You want to just talk about that a little bit?
The device side? Yes, sure. So as far as that goes, it's very easy we have very easy deployment, so you don't have to worry about that. Having thousands of devices, obviously, is usually like in a manufacturing case, right? You might have cameras, you'll have robotics, obviously, printers, and so on and so forth. And so what we can do, because of bringing the next-gen firewalls at the edge, we can help segment that so that the robotics can't be talking to the cameras, and the cameras can't be talking to the printers, et cetera. They stay in their own zone. And then also, we do what we call application layer 7 inspection, which is in the ISO model the most granular you can get for seeing any sort of lateral movement happening within the OT environment. So very.
See, that was something new people may not have known about.
Yes, this is
Yeah.
true.
Thank you for that. Parm, how are you going to make all this work? You know, you got a network that's got to be, what, 20 millisecond? You got to piece this thing all together, right? So from a network provider perspective, you got to support these devices on there, you got to make it secure, and then you got to handle all the automation. How does NTT approach that?
Yeah, no, it's not a simple task as all of these pieces need to come together. And at the same time, there's constraints like deterministic network, being able to have that 20 milliseconds. We talked about battery life. We talked about security. So I think as a global SI, and we've been building these type of solutions, and NTT, has, and I love many of you, our clients, to come to Japan and see some of the work that we're doing. How we build these, so building all the way from chips, semiconductors, to devices, to drones. We actually even make drones ourselves. It's definitely, I think, working on these, we can't do this, making this sausage in front of the client. So we as an industry have to work on these. So a couple of things I think you have to think about is, who's going to build that? It's not a single company. It's a group, and having this ecosystem, I think, like you said, it's about devices is going to be important. Just even getting the devices to work on the network, the profile, yes, the hardware works, we all know that, but the profile doesn't necessarily always work. So it's getting easier, I would say, from 5 years ago to where we are. Huge progress in the industry. You can actually now take an iPhone or an iOS device or an Android device, turn it on, and it works. Then the next question comes, okay, what about, let's talk about physical AI was mentioned. Majority of physical AI today that is actually built is primarily around computer vision. They're using computer vision sensors like Axis camera or other cameras to gather the visual data and make an interpretation. Quality, safety, process. That's what it is. The real value is, okay, I know something happened, maybe an assembly process, the assembly was done well, but I don't really know if the temperature was right. Did the person torque that bolt correctly? Yeah, they torqued it, but was it done correctly? So humans are still making those interpretations. The real value of AI comes in, and physical AI comes in, is when you can amalgamate other sensor data. So sensors like temperature, you talked about safety around gas, working in a chemical plant or an oil and gas plant, safety is a huge part, but also not only safety of the human, but also to do any maintenance. You need to make sure it's safe to do maintenance, even if a robot's doing maintenance. So physical AI needs, what we term, NTT terms, something called sensor fusion. How do I fuse all the data of all those sensors? Humans are really good at looking at the data and making a decision, but it takes time. Machines can do it faster, but that means the data has to arrive synchronously. It can't be 20 milliseconds later or 100 milliseconds later, because then that AI is going to make wrong decisions, right? So it has to arrive. And this is the biggest challenge in what, as Shahid was saying, these are mathematical models. They're not interpreting sentences or language in LLM. They're actually interpreting data. And that data, if it's offset or it's not correct, it's going to make that sub-second decision incorrectly because a piece of data arrived late. And this is where private 5G comes in, because private 5G is a deterministic network. We can actually have QoS, and we can actually have deterministic latency. And I think those things need to come together and make that entire network, from security, all these together with an SI partner.
That's right, Parm. So you're teeing up the question, right? So if you spend time with the head of OT, right? They look at you as 4 different silos, right? They don't even think you guys talk to each other, really. They don't. I mean, they look at it as unique silos. So if you're going to start doing like policy management or SLAs and performance level management, that's what they're going to ask you to do. You guys all need to figure it out. And I'm going to ask you to sign a performance level that's got liquidated damages on it because you're venturing into a dangerous space, right? These are mission critical applications that are running on, a private 5G network, which is what it was meant to do in the first place, and has direct and indirect consequential damages, depending on how you look at it, opportunity, but also damages. So just if you really think about it down the line, if something goes wrong, okay, I spent a lot of time in the airport space. A network goes down below the wing and you can't service that airplane and it's down for 2 hours. A lot of irritated passengers, but worse than that, that's a lot of money. Who's responsible for that?
So
like who's going to take that clause in the contract and say, I got direct damages and I'll take consequential?
So that's, as a managed service provider and operator, that's what we do. And we have to put a lot of faith in all of the parts, including the network itself. When we, sitting down with Rajeev and the team, helping design the network, monitoring, it's also how you're reporting and make sure you have the right data. So I think that is the role that we take. So I think that is part of the managed service offering.
Yeah, it gets into a tricky area, right? Because I've seen contracts been awarded, and I've seen them not awarded just because of that. So it's something to think about as an industry. What is our stance on limitations of liability and caps or direct and indirect consequential damages?
This is my bag. As an alliance person, I look for ways to limit those types of exposures, right? So with Celona, we do meaningful integrations that when they are deployed, it just works. So currently right now, we're finalizing our eSIM integration, our RedCap launch with them, but we already have several integrations done. Things like supernetting, giving that visibility throughout that network, VXLAN, all sorts of things that when a customer deploys a Digi with a Celona network, it just works. There's no Frankenstein moment. There's no challenges to that SLA. And so we do that also with the software companies we work with. All of our devices have gigs of memory on it. And so we go out, we find those edge software companies like the AutoSolves, like the inductive automations, and not only do we do an initial certification, but then we have ongoing engineers that when they do a software update, we make sure and we check it still works. So when somebody goes and deploys a software edge application in the middle of the oil field, they're not trying to figure it out right there in the middle of the oil field.
Yeah, I just think, Matt, you're doing the automation. What do they ask you to sign up for direct and indirect liability?
Well, the customers look for everything. The one thing you mentioned, there's 4 silos. Typically, a customer is dealing with hundreds. There's the OEM that makes the packaging machine. Some OEM makes another machine. There's the infrastructure. You've got SAP. You've got it's an insane amount of. This
is real-time, mission-critical enterprise industrial applications.
So think of a gas. Think of a gas plant, something dangerous. The SLA is a mix of the integrator that actually knows how our gear was used for that specific application. So, I don't know what's a good analogy. It's the person who puts the system together with the final wiring, and whether it's wired or wireless, the final control algorithms, the final everything. That's the person who typically owns the SLA because they know exactly how this system was put together. And then you liken it to support. We're like a tier 2 or a tier 3 on that. But we have customers where it's insane money per minute when they're down. Pick a pharmaceutical, pick an automotive, pick a whatever, it's bad. It's a big deal.
Yes, I just raise it because I think it's something we need to think through a little bit more because the answers we've gotten from the industry, this industry, is not thought through.
And Celona does this, but one thing that's critical is site survey is only good till you left. We've done plants where, hey, it works great. On Thursdays, everything fails. Well, they bring a tanker car. They bring a rail tanker car in.
But is it the network? Is it the automation? Exactly. Is it the security? Is it the device? I mean, it's like...
So maybe just one, many of our customers, we have managed services, we do financially backed SLAs. That's where the real money is. What are you willing to sign up for? And I think...
I'm going to remember that, Parm.
Yeah. You can remember that, and Shai's right here. But that is not
indirect too.
Well, some ask, yes, right. But that's why we have partners, and we rely on Celona, and I can say confidently they deliver. Mm-hmm. The point also is that in order to deliver that, it's also what the end goal. Let's not forget the end goal we're trying to reach, right? It's driving the right behavior, making sure everyone's done all the homework, put everything together. The customer doesn't want to charge me. That's not going to help them. They want to make sure that
wants to go there.
Exactly. They want to make sure that actually their end product and performance is there. And that if there is a problem, which there will be a problem, you solve it within that SLA.
Yeah, that's right.
That's really what the end goal is. So when you say, hey, industry, I think let's not forget the goal.
Yep. That's right. So I think we have a minute or two for questions. I hope you guys have some. Are there any? I think we have like 5 more minutes. We didn't do that great of a job, so.
He's hungry.
I think we have 1 or 2.
Hi, Andrew Wiedela. I'm with Lawrence Berkeley National Labs Energy Sciences Network. We deploy science instruments all over the country. Yeah, I really think you've hit the nail on the head, but particularly on the on-go perspective in terms of we have to widen the set of devices available. Very excited about RedCap and where this is all going. I'd really love to see on-go become a little more aggressive in terms of like not just certifying devices that work, but also pointing out that there are devices by major manufacturers that claim they do band 48 and claim they do CBRS, but only do commercial band 48. And really pointing that out so that we can all avoid expensive mistakes.
Yeah, I guess I'll take that one. It's so I mean, I couldn't agree with you more, and I look forward to seeing you in May in Dallas at our meeting, I hope. So, but the thing is it's not an easy thing to do, and maybe that's why no one's done it. But if it's not going to be the on-go alliance, it won't ever get done. So we need to look at band 40, band 48 in the U.S., but 77, 78. We need to look at the whole C-band side of this thing globally. We need to get industry has no voice. It's such a disappointment to me. That industry is so disorganized or has other priorities that they can't even figure out what their spectrum policy is. I mean, it's pretty important. They care about their real estate property, like their physical real estate property, but they could give a rat's you-know-what about everything above them. And I just can't understand it. So we're going to drive industry's voice when it comes to spectrum advocacy for what they need to be competitive on a global scale and what they need to increase the GDP of each one of their countries respectively. There's a big problem, and I think we know why. But we need to then do device forecasts so that some of the people in this audience, but all the other major OEMs will go, oh man, I need to pay attention to this because they're going to spend a lot of money. And they will, but no one's organized. So we're going to, as on-go, take that on, and hopefully we'll be successful, but we need help. So we're going to point in the direction, we're going to tell everybody where we're going, and then we're going to need a lot of help to get there.
Okay, I'm going to help you answer that question you had about the industrial market. The industrial market's an old market, it's a mature market, and it's built on some very old industrial, legacy, yeah. And what I've seen happen, because I've been in this market all of my life, is that the more new technology that we introduce, the further the hole is. And we keep getting them further and further away, and they feel like they're stranded. They don't have a way to get there. Do they want to get there? They absolutely want to get there. Do they want AI? They absolutely want AI. But when you're taking pneumatic, Mr. Rockwell's going to add to this, I can tell. But when you're taking pneumatic information, 4 to 20, things that are measured by the current and electricity going through it, you take away all of the the digital side of it, and that is probably 70 to 80% of all the I/O, and that's the sensors and information that exists in the field today. Would you agree with me, Mr. Rockwell?
Yeah, I would say it's probably more.
Okay,
Yeah.
I was being nice.
The other piece of that is the focus is different. In the automation space, the focus isn't technology. The focus is hot dogs or Clorox bleach
The
or
focus
whatever
is
they're
making oil.
yeah, well, whatever
That's
they're
what it
trying to
is.
get out the door.
Everything through the pipes. But that's a really big, it's a huge market. I work for a huge company, and it's a huge market. But there's a really big blank space, and I have been through Foundation Field Bus and all of these technologies that we've had that are going on Ethernet and different protocols we have. But until we can find a way for them to gently, easily get their stuff on a digital platform, it's going to be a real struggle. I wish it wasn't, because I'd make a lot of money if I could, and my company would, but it is factual,
Yeah.
correct? Yeah. So that's your answer. Help you answer.
But I think there's another part to that answer. One is, we're talking about data, right? I would say in the industry, data is the goal, is the oil. And it's siloed, and you need that data, because if as an organization, I get your point. It's making the hot dog machine is making the hot dogs. It's the car making the car. Companies are realizing that, I think personally, that AI is what is really going to drive that, and it's the physical AI. It's driving greater production, better quality first time, not only at the end, but through the process. It's changing how quality assessment is done as things are being built. But that data today is siloed. It's in a Rockwell system, it might be in an ABB system, it might be in another system. So solving that foundational problem is a huge issue, I think. And that is where that's going to happen. It's either going to happen by the industry, or somebody's going to figure out how to do it better. And that's what we see, is that this is a data problem. Yep. That data has to be site synchronous, et cetera, packaged in a way and secure.
That's right, and this is what this is all about. You got to do the automation, you got to make it secure, you got to connect devices, and then the network's got to be there to put that all together. So,
I worked for years enabling automation technology over cellular. And I played with every single protocol, and we made them all work. It was all about how do you enable RS-232 and RS-485 devices running BSAP and DF1 and Modbus RTU and ASCII and you name it. And we made them all work. And for years, we deployed that in water, wastewater, oil and gas. I don't see why this is any different. You're just the TCP transport layer. Why is there such consternation about dropping private cellular into the same exact architecture with the same RTUs and PLCs that have always existed? I don't get it. This consternation about having legacy automation device manufacturers embrace private cellular, why? They're not embedding, half of them don't even, 90% of them don't embed public cellular into their technology, and we're able to make that work. Why is this such a challenge? I don't get it.
I mean, we're gentle, we're easy, but we have been connecting to those PLCs, those interfaces for 40 years with digital analog IOs, serial. That's what we've done, and that's what we continue to do, and now we're just connecting it to a private 5G network by Celona. So gentle and easy, we can do it.
Yeah, stop over, I'll show you a demo.
all right, you guys, thank you very much for the panel. Please give them a welcome round of